Dear students, my name is Dr. Mazullah Khan, and I welcome you to my video lectures. Today, we will cover parts of chapter number 6, which is financial statement analysis. Writing is actually extremely important for your learning because it activates a larger part of your brain. So please get your pen and paper ready, pause this video, and take quality notes. In the first part of chapter number 6, I introduce you to financial statements. For the purpose of this chapter, we were mainly interested in balance sheet and income statement. And then I introduced you to decision-making process. And as I told you in my first lecture, that the decision-making process starts with data, and then we have to analyze it and convert it into useful information. So analysis is extremely important step in the whole decision-making process. And for analysis, of course, you need some tools. Those analytical tools we will cover one by one in a series of lectures. One of the tool is ratio analysis, and ratio analysis, as I told you in my first lecture, can be categorized in 5 different groups. The first group is liquidity ratios. The second one is financial leverage ratios. The third one is coverage ratios. The fourth one is activity ratios. And the last one is profitability ratios. And then we will also cover trend analysis, common size, and index analysis. In today's lecture, I will cover mainly the importance of financial analysis. That's why do we need it. And then I will also tell you the rationale behind ratios. That's why do we need ratios, types of ratios, and then I will also cover uses of financial ratios, that how do we use financial ratios in real life. So as a finance manager, if you are calculating financial ratios, of course you are doing it for a purpose. So I will tell you the use of financial ratios as well. Financial analysis. So as a finance manager, one of your job is actually to evaluate the financial condition and performance of firms. This can be a firm that you are working in, and this can be a firm that, let's say, if you're interested to invest your money in. Condition and for performance, although they look similar terms, but they are actually different. And I'll give you an example. For example, Air Canada, it's a big airline, it's a giant. The condition of that company is solid. It's a strong company. But the performance, unfortunately, has been not that great because of the pandemic. And it's actually not Air Canada alone. In fact, all airlines around the world, they have been barely hit by the coronavirus pandemic. The one word that we use for financial condition and performance is actually financial health. So as a finance manager, one of your job is actually to evaluate the financial health of a company. And as I said here, finance managers are just like physicians and doctors. So what doctors do, they need some tools for assessment. So in order to assess the health of their patients, of course, they need some tools, like, for example, thermometers, blood pressure machines. And of course, they also need, let's say, laboratory tests. And after all those tests, they can form an educated opinion and informed opinion, and then they can prescribe accordingly. Finance managers, as I said, they're just like physicians. They also need some tools in order to assess the financial health of a company. And one of the tools is actually financial ratios. So financial ratios, as the name suggests, is just like any other ratio. It's an index. And how do we get this index? By two accounting numbers, by dividing one number by another, just like this one. So it has a numerator and it has a denominator. But financial ratio, as you can see from the definition, it actually relates to accounting numbers. Now the next question is, where are these accounting numbers coming from? Of course they are coming from financial statements. And that's why these analyses are called financial statement analysis. Now, depending on the numerator and denominator, we can divide the ratios into two different types. One is balance sheet ratios. So whenever, let's say, both the numerator and denominator, if they are coming from balance sheet, those ratios are called balance sheet ratios. For example, and I copied this figure actually from the book. So if you see liquidity ratios, they are purely coming from balance sheet, all those accounting numbers. So that's why they are balance sheet ratios. But some of the ratios, either the numerator or denominator, they are either coming from balance sheet or income statement or from both. So those are called income statement or balance sheet ratios. So there are two types. You can also actually categorize it in three different types. For example, balance sheet ratios, income statement ratios, and then mixed ratios. But the book uses only two categorization. One is balance sheet ratios and the other one is income statement and balance sheet ratios. So it's simple. If both the numerator and denominator are coming from balance sheet, I repeat, they are balance sheet ratios. And if they are coming from multiple sources, for example, balance sheet and income statement, then they are called income statement balance sheet ratios. The next question that we should ask ourselves is, why ratios? Absolute statements and numbers are misleading. And why are they misleading? I'll give you an example. So suppose if I ask you a question, suppose you bought a laptop recently, and I asked you a question, how did you like it? And you tell me, oh, I didn't like it because it's a little bit heavy. Now the question is, heavy compared to what? Is it heavy compared to, let's say, any other laptop in the competition? Or is it heavy compared to, let's say, your sister's laptop? Or let's say, is it heavy compared to a desktop? Now, comparison of a laptop to a desktop, it will not be a good comparison because these are like two different animals. You have to compare similar stuff. So if you give a statement in absolute terms and do not relate it to anything else, it's misleading. It doesn't give you enough information. Let me give you an example from finance. So suppose a company makes $1 million profit in a year. So if you see this information in absolute terms, this performance is fantastic. $1 million is a lot of money. But what if the company has invested, let's say, $200 million in total assets? So if I now relate the profit of $1 million with $200 million investment, the return on investment, it is also called return on asset, but a more used term for this ratio is actually return on investment. So return on investment in this situation is only 0.5%. So $1 million in absolute terms, it looked fantastic. But let's say if I calculate a ratio of return on investment, the performance is absolutely pathetic. It's only 0.5%. Now suppose if your company is operating in an economy where the government bond, which is a risk-free security, pays 4% annual return. So will you be happy with 0.5% return? Probably not, because you are only getting 0.5% return and you are taking some risk as well. On the other hand, you had another opportunity where you could make 4% return without taking any risk. So the whole point is the calculation of ratios is extremely important. And as I said, if you look at different things, even the financial numbers in absolute terms, they are misleading. There are certain uses for financial ratios. One of the most important use is internal comparisons. Example, how does return on investment for your company look like over the years? Just like this one. So let's say if for 2019, your return on investment was 5.3%. As a finance manager, sometimes you're curious, and you're curious for the right reasons, that how is this performance compared to our last year's return on investment? So of course, you can use financial ratios for internal comparisons. And if you're comparing those ratios over a period of time, it's called trend analysis. Financial ratios can also be used for external comparisons. And whenever we are talking about external comparisons, normally you compare the financial ratios with industry. So for example, internal comparisons suggest that the company's return on investment is increasing year by year, which is great. It means that your company is moving in the right direction. You're making more money compared to last year. But the external comparisons on the other side suggest a different story. So it's not only your company who is making more money, it's actually an industry-wide trend. So for example, in 2017, the return on investment in your company was 4.1%, but the industry was 4.5%. 2018, your company made 4.7% return on investment, and the industry, it was 4.9%. And for 2019, 5.3 versus 5.7. So if you see here, there is 0.4 percentage points difference between the industry and your own company. So if you compare your return on investment with the industry, it's below average. So that is something that you could actually improve upon. So the message from this slide is that you can use financial ratios for internal comparisons through trend analysis, and you can also use those financial ratios for external comparisons. And external comparisons, you simply compare your ratios with industry. Now, this is something important. You can use any ratio for your analysis. So in this chapter, actually, we will cover only the most important ratios which are used in the industry. But as a finance manager, you can calculate whatever ratio you like. But the ratio should make sense. For example, return on investment makes perfect sense. Not all ratios, unfortunately, make sense. For example, there is hardly any intuitive or logical interpretation, let's say, for this ratio, cash divided by owner's equity. So let me give you an example from the industry. I have downloaded an annual report from Engro Fertilizers. And if you see the profitability ratios, there are plenty of them. more than actually 24. Starting with return on equity. Return on equity, one is after tax, the other one is before tax. Then return on capital employed, pre-tax margin, and then there is another pre-tax margin where you include the subsidy. So the whole point is that you can calculate whatever ratio that you like, but the ratio has to make some sense. Coming back to our slides. Okay, so this was actually the lecture for today. In the next lectures, I will cover all those analytical tools one by one. So in the next lecture, I will cover liquidity ratios. And initially, I thought that probably I'll shoot a long video where I will cover all the ratios in one video. But now I have changed my mind. I will actually shorter videos on individual ratios. In that way, it's much easier to navigate through these ratios, and it's not that boring. So I'll try to make those videos as short as possible, because I would like to save some time for you. But at the same time, I will give you some examples so that you understand the whole idea in complete sense. So I will cover all those ratios individually in each lecture. And then we will move to, of course, trend analysis and common size and index analysis. As I told you in my first lecture, of course, you have to watch these videos in order to learn from it. I will also upload the PowerPoint slides, and please read chapter number 6 of the recommended book. Any questions, send me an email or at mozilla@gkey.edu.pk, or maybe drop me a question in WhatsApp group. This is the book that we are using for our learning. Feedback is extremely important. Online lectures is something that we are doing in the post-midterm sessions. So this is something new for us. Please share your feedback. If you think that I can improve my lectures further, please share your ideas with me, and I'll be happy to accommodate your ideas in my future lectures, because the whole point is I would like to make my videos in a way that you find them easy to learn from. I thank you very much for your attention. And as I said, taking notes is extremely important. So if you did not take notes, please go back, rewind this video, watch it again, and take some notes. The reason is, as I said, sequential movement of hands, writing, actually it activates a larger portion of your brain, and it's really good for your learning. So I thank you for your attention, and please send me your feedback. I'll see you in the next lecture. Have a great day.